So I know a lot of you guys have probably been waiting for me to bash Kawhi Leonard. And honestly, now is the time. You're gonna finally get your wish. It is time to bash Kawhi because I don't think I gave him enough blame for what happened in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs. For those who do not understand the history behind this video, it is because I made a video a couple of months ago titled Kawhi Leonard is the best player on the planet and nobody cares. At that time he was going off against the Dallas Mavericks, but unfortunately just a couple weeks later the Clippers would blow their infamous 3-1 lead for a second time on the verge of making the conference finals, and they would be sent home earlier than expected as they were the title favorites. But unfortunately in this video, this is not going to be positive about Kawhi. This is going to be negative because Kawhi Leonard, I don't think, gets enough blame, enough hate, and enough criticism for what happened in that series and the resulted aftermath. Because as much as people love Kawhi for not being out there like that and being quiet, keeping to himself, not putting himself in the media for the eye of the storm, Kawhi Leonard needs to come to the realization that he was put in the conversation among the best players. If not, people deemed him the best player in the NBA. If you didn't look at him like that, you at least had him in the top 3 with guys like LeBron, Giannis, AD, and James Harden. And if that's the standards that we're going to hold him to, where is the blame and criticism for Kawhi Leonard blowing a 3-1 lead and playing like shit when his team needed him most, primarily in the second half of Game 7, going 1 of 10 from the field in the second half of the most important game of the season that determines if the organization is going to make the Western Conference Finals for the first time in its franchise's history is completely unacceptable. He played worse than Paul George at the end of that Game 7, and people still gave Paul George hella blame. Now I understand why Paul George got hella hate, because PG, he played like shit in the first round, had to deactivate his Instagram comments, dropped that stupid middle school ass quote on Instagram, then went in the press conference and said that it's not a championship or bust year, and there's so much more things I could say about PG, but if I did that I would have to make an entirely different video. I get why Paul George got more hate than Kawhi Leonard, especially on social media. He's just an easy target with all the excuses that he babbles about each and every single second of his life. But regardless of how you feel about PG, that does not excuse Kawhi Leonard as the leader, the best player on the team, and somebody that we view as one of the top 3 players on the planet Earth. You can't just let it go that he blew a 3-1 lead. I mean, think about it. Look at all the stars that have blown 3-1 leads over the last couple of years. Kevin Durant blew a 3-1 lead to the Warriors, and we still hold it against him as to why his rings just don't count. Steph Curry blew a 3-1 lead in the NBA Finals, and people still think that he's not clutch. That stigma still stays with Steph. So now it's time for us to apply those same standards and level of blame / hate. I'm not gonna hate, but other people do. We need to apply that towards Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is one of the greatest players that the league has ever seen. He had a chance to really put himself in the conversation among all-time greats that honestly Kawhi Leonard can't get back now, because had Kawhi Leonard won the championship this past season with the Los Angeles Clippers, not only would he have become a 2-time NBA champion consecutively, that would make 3 rings for his resume. LeBron would still have 3 rings. They'd be tied at the same amount of chips and finals MVPs, but it also would have meant he'd be the first player to win 3 different championships with 3 different organizations while getting the finals MVP. But unfortunately, guess who did that this past year? LeBron James, as he won with the Los Angeles Lakers, and he also has 2 other rings with the Miami Heat and Cleveland Cavaliers. So you're now starting to see that Kawhi Leonard's importance of a championship this year is not as important as it was last year. It would definitely help his legacy and put him in different conversations among all-time greats, but he can never get back the opportunity that was presented towards him this past NBA season. And it really sucks because you see these guys grind for years, step up to the plate, and put themselves in positions to elevate their legacies to new heights. Guys like Steph Curry in 2016, that NBA Finals would have been so important for his legacy to eventually become a top 10 player, but he failed. Kevin Durant in 2016 also put himself in a position to where he could have knocked down the 73-9 Warriors and then eventually beaten the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016 NBA Finals. And if he had done that, who knows what his legacy would have been. But then you look at a guy like Kawhi, coming off of a championship in which he gave a country their first ring. He then goes to the Los Angeles Clippers, which are the stepbrothers of the organization that has LeBron James. And he recruits Paul George there, talks all this shit, or at least the Clippers do. He even puts out a commercial, calls it his own city, but yet people aren't gonna bash him for not even making the conference finals and blowing a 3-1 lead in the process? No, that's not how this works. Because if you're going to look at LeBron James as this guy that went to the Lakers just for Hollywood and just because he wanted to do Space Jam, work with Michael B. Jordan, and do all of that stuff, etc., then you need to have those same standards and apply them towards Kawhi Leonard. And I know I made an article in which the Clippers' future looking very bleak right now because Kawhi and Paul George could leave after this season. I don't care what Paul George said about retiring in LA. We all know he has a very fraudulent history when it comes to making promises. But I don't think a lot of people understand how dirty Kawhi Leonard would be doing the Clippers if he were to just get up and walk in free agency. Let's not forget that Kawhi Leonard was the one that asked Kevin Durant, asked Jimmy Butler, asked Kyrie Irving, you want to come play? You want to come to LA? You want to be my co-star? And all of them turned him down. But instead, he ended up getting Paul George because he was essentially his last option. And he pushed for the Clippers to trade him. And not only did they trade for PG, but they gave up their entire future for PG. They gave up Shea. They gave up draft picks. They essentially gave him everything that he wanted. Load management, you got it. PG, you got it. Marcus Morris, you got it. Reggie Jackson, you got it. And you went out there and wet the bed in the playoffs and didn't even get them a conference finals appearance. Kawhi Leonard, if you want to blame anybody, you need to look in the mirror and blame yourself. And I'm not here saying that Kawhi is going out there making excuses. We all saw his press conference. He took full accountability for what happened. But when you're not a vocal leader like that, when you push the team to do what they did in order to get Paul George to appease you to sign with them, especially when you're leaving a team that just came off of winning an NBA championship, then you need to at least have this organization's back when they need you to do the same thing. Sure, you could be put in better positions. They could give you a point guard, but you have the pieces to get the job done. If you're the best player in the NBA, there should be no excuse for you to at least not make the conference finals and go down swinging against the Los Angeles Lakers. Because sure, you could actually make the argument the Lakers are just flat out better than the Clippers right now, but that's no excuse for you to go out there and wet the bed like you did last year. So Kawhi Leonard, the ball is in your court. Either you step up or step aside, because LeBron James, Jokic, Curry, all these top tier names in the Western Conference, you could throw Harden in there for the time being also. They're not just gonna go away. They're only going to get better, and eventually they're gonna pass you by. So you need to step up, because at this point, I'm really starting to doubt the kind of player that you really are. And I've never said that about Kawhi, but that just goes to show you what he last did in the playoffs, how it affected my viewing of his state in the NBA. But hey, that's just my opinion. Let me know yours down below in the comment section. Do not forget to drop a like if you enjoyed this video. Let's aim for at least 1,000 likes. Also hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed what you see from this channel. Push the bell for post notifications. Check out my articles. The links are in the description box, as well as my social media accounts. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. Peace.